Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jai Picks. The other half of the show, the Parlay, joining me in to break down the final card of the year, UFC 296. Absolutely stacked. Let's get into it. So last year we had the pay-per-view card in December, and then we had an Apex card to close out the year. This year we got the final pay-per-view in the final card of the year. It should be an absolute banger of a card. 14 fights. Hopefully no fights get canceled, and we get 14 fights to bet on and 14 fights to watch, because we'll be there in attendance in Las Vegas. So if you're out there, you see us, say what's up. But what do you think of the card overall? I'm sure you got some good things to say.
Oh yeah, dude, I love this card. And I don't know if this is the, dead set order, but if it is, you're opening the card with Randy Brown and Muslim Salikhov, who both are great strikers, both got some power. But then even like up the card on the prelims, Andre Fili, Lucas Almeida, that's a banger. Tajir, Cody Durden, that's going to be some high level grappling. Dustin Jacoby, Alonzo Menifield with some power in that one. I mean, even like Garbrandt, Kelleher, like that's a banger. Like Garbrandt might not have the chin anymore. Kelleher's maybe a little older, but their styles are going to clash, and it's going to be an absolute banger. I don't think there's a single fight on this card where you're going to be sitting in your seat thinking, man, this sucks. This is boring. I think it's all action from start to finish, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, you got ranked fighters. I mean, starting with Martin Buday, I believe. He's like bottom of the heavyweight ranking, second fight of the night. And, I mean, it just keeps going on there. The only not ranked is Cody Garbrandt, Brian Kelleher in the featured prelim, but the name value is definitely there in that one. Obviously, main card is pretty stacked. I apologize. It was not the featured prelim. Featured prelim is actually two ranked featherweights, Josh Emmett, Bryce Mitchell. Main card absolutely stacked, and looking forward to it. We're going to go through and give you the breakdown for every single fight. We'll give our pick here, but if you want the bets, you can jump in the link to join the Double Leg Premium membership. It's in the description there, or you can wait till Friday when all the bets are finalized and just get the bets for this card, because this is the last one. So that's probably the best way to go about it, honestly. If you're a new viewer here, you want to jump in on the bets, probably just wait till Friday and get in there, because we don't have a card for the next month after that. So probably the best way to go about it there. But let's get into it. We got 14 fights, so might be a longer card, but I'll put the timestamps down, and then later in the week we'll have the individual videos out. So let's start it off with the main event, the welterweight championship of the world. Leon Edwards coming in to defend the title at -165, going up against Colby Covington, sitting at +135. Over under 4.5 rounds, -240 for the over, +200 for the under. A lot of people, I'm sure, are going to be looking to take Colby Covington as an underdog, because there's a lot of hype around his return. He's been off for 21 months, and now he steps in for a championship fight. Leon Edwards defended the title back in March against Kamaru Usman, and he's going to try to defend it here against Colby. You see the age difference there. Leon Edwards still younger by 3 years, a couple inches in height advantage and a couple inches in reach. And the man, Leon Edwards, has not lost a fight in a very long time. So at -165, it's interesting. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, first of all, there's not a better way, in my opinion, to end the year and have this as the very last fight before nearly a month-long break. But man, there's so much on each side that could play factors. I mean, Colby Covington, you mentioned it. He's been off for like 21 months. But Leon's not exactly like the most active guy as a champion or as a fighter either. I think since 2019, he's fought 4 times, 2021, once last year and once this year in March. So he's not the most active either. His last 2 fights, Kamaru Usman, gave Kamaru his first loss in 15 fights, head kick knockout, but he was losing that fight up until that moment. And then he goes into the I guess, trilogy for the belt again over in England, and he beats him by majority decision in a very, very closely contested fight. Kamaru got that wrestling style with a good jab and some very, very technical striking. And I look at Colby and Kamaru very similarly. I think the wrestling is outstanding. Their striking is technical and good. But the one difference in Colby and Kamaru in the striking department is Colby's like a wild animal in there. This dude's just going to come at you with all this volume. He's going to land some big shots. He's going to pressure you. He's going to be in your face the whole time. Where Kamaru's kind of more methodical as he tries to use the jab and the striking to enter and to get a takedown. Colby's just, I mean, his nickname says it perfectly, chaos in there. I mean, I think that's the one thing that could get to Leon Edwards in this fight. If he gets him up against the cage and he starts landing good combinations and ripping the body and then shooting takedowns and making Leon defend, or getting the takedown and making Leon trying to get back to his feet. And you just got to hope Leon slows down and tires out a little bit, because we all know Colby Covington, maybe the best cardio in the game. The guy is insane with it. For Leon, though, I mean, they say you get, 30% better once you become champion. And he definitely showed a massive leap in I don't even want to say skill because he's got it. But the fight with Kamaru Usman, their third fight, I mean, he looks so much better throughout the whole fight in that one than he did in the prior, the one where he won by head kick. So he's made improvements, obviously. Striking department, more technical. The kicks are phenomenal. He's probably going to have the edge in power on the feet. He's going to have the edge in accuracy. But he's not the most volume-based striker. He throws a good 1-2. He throws that great kick. He brings it up high and he catches guys with it. But, he's only landing 2.8 significant strikes per minute. And that's relatively low compared to Colby's 4.10. So there's going to be a little bit of volume difference there. And, if Leon isn't landing the big shots and Colby's landing a lot of volume and a lot of pressure, I just think that looks better to the judges. But there's always the chance that Leon comes out and cracks the chin and gets the knockout here too, because he's done it to Kamaru Usman, a guy who's never been knocked out like that in his life. He's done it to other guys where he just catches dudes right and they fall. And I don't think Colby's any different. We've seen Colby hurt before. We've seen him get hit before and dropped. And if guys like Kamaru are doing it, I could see Leon doing it as well. For the pick, I'm going with chaos. I like the pressure. I like the style here. Donald Trump's going to be in the stands. Colby is going to be coming out wanting to get that win there. He seems to feed off the pressure. He feeds off the crowd. And I think it just lights a jolt under him and he goes out there and gets it done. But I mean, it's not a confident pick by any means at all, because these are two of the very best. And Leon Edwards is very capable of, completely knocking Colby out or winning a decision too. So it's going to be a very fun fight.
Yeah, I don't think there's any secrets about like what both fighters want to do in this one. Leon wants to keep it on the feet and use his striking. Colby wants to grind on him and basically just, be chaos in there, what he does, and probably chain wrestle. Don't give him any space and just be kind of a wet blanket on him. Probably going to look to, get a bunch of takedowns, let him up, drop him again, wear him out so he can take over later in the fight. You mentioned Leon Edwards not being super active, and I mentioned it on the Anik podcast, but the Leon Edwards, for the fact that he didn't take the fight in July, because that was when the UFC was going back to England, and Colby wanted to make that the pay-per-view and make that the fight there. Leon didn't want it. I think that was smart of him, because I don't like the fast turnarounds for these champions when they come, off a big win and then they got to turn around in 3 or 4 months. I just don't like it. So I think that was smart of him to take the time off and come back, 9 months later and be really prepared to take on Colby Covington, because it's not going to be an easy fight by any means. Any fighter that's in there with Colby, you got to be ready for 5 rounds. You got to be ready to deal with that type of pressure. For Colby, I think he could probably look at the fight with Kamaru and Leon and take a different approach with his takedowns. Kamaru was kind of like a single leg guy, and Leon defended those single legs very well. And I don't think Colby's going to, look to do that. I think he would probably look to shoot more double legs, maybe even switch to from a double leg and then try to take the back on the feet and then drag him down to the ground that way. I could see that happening for Leon. Having those fights with Kamaru and being able to stuff 11 of 15 takedowns against Kamaru probably gives him a lot of confidence going into this one. And I like the fact that he's had those rounds with Kamaru going up against Colby, because Leon is kind of a sniper and, like you said, kind of low volume. And he picked his shots very nicely against Kamaru. In this one, I think he's got to pick his shots even better, because if he doesn't, then it could turn into a judge's decision, and it gets very subjective. He's not in England anymore, where he might have a little bit of the crowd more on his side. I would expect the crowd to be on Colby's side in this one, fighting in Las Vegas, and a lot of people are from America and they want to see the American champ. So Leon Edwards, he has very good counter striking, and we saw it when I watched back Colby's fights with Jorge Masvidal, with Kamaru. He can get countered pretty easily. So that scares me on the Covington side, because he can get caught. He got dropped twice by Kamaru, basically got dropped by Jorge with that right hand, took a knee. He said it was for the troops, but definitely got cracked with that one. And Masvidal just super aged. Like, watching that fight on the feet, how it played out on the feet, I wasn't impressed with Colby whatsoever. I know he still got the win. I know it was a clear win for Colby, but Leon's a different animal on the feet. Much younger, much faster, much longer. And I just think Leon, with the skill set he possesses, should be able to get it done. And, Colby's only getting older. With the layoff, I don't think he's going to come in here looking like some different type of fighter. He's going to be the same Colby Chaos Covington that we know. So coming in here, I think Leon, as the champion, should be able to get it done. I think he could find a knockout as well. At the price, like, you're getting Leon defending the title at minus 145, minus 150. I don't think it's terrible. So pick for me will be Leon Edwards, expecting and still. You got anything else on that one?
Who do you think the UFC would benefit more from a win here, Colby or Leon?
Definitely Colby, but I sometimes it doesn't work out for him.
No, for sure. I was just curious. Yeah.
I don't think they really lose either way, but
Right.
definitely, if Colby beats him, that's for sure a win for the UFC by all means. But
yeah, because Colby's a draw always, but at the same time, the UFC wants champions from other countries to build fan bases and to have big cards overseas. So yeah, lose for the UFC. But man, dude, I just have a feeling we're in for a wild ass fight in this one.
Yeah, it should be chaos for sure, and I'm looking forward to it. We'll move on. Co-main event, flyweight championship of the world. Alexandre Pantoja coming in at minus 170 against Brandon Royval, sitting at plus 140. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 130 for the over, minus 160 for the under. Pantoja looking to defend his title for the first time after getting against Moreno back at UFC 290, which we were at. That was a fun fight. I think this is going to be a super fun fight. I think the most underrated fight on the card. I know a lot of people, these aren't like super big names, but these guys can scrap. Royval coming off a big knockout against Mateusz Nicolau, which we were also there for, UFC Kansas City. Hit him with the knee and then put him out. So it's a good fight. I'm really looking forward to this one. The line there, Pantoja. One thing I'll note before I send it over to you, Pantoja fought Brandon Royval before and beat him. That was back in 2021. And the betting odds for that one were basically the same. He went and rear naked choked him in the second round, and we're getting the same line here. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I love Brandon Royval. Watching him, the style is so much fun. But Alexandre Pantoja showed us, and not just the last fight against Moreno, but other fights. Like, he is just so well versed. Anywhere the fight goes, he can hang. Like, he was able to hang with Moreno on the feet. And Moreno's boxing is so clean. He's able to hang with him there, land some good shots of his own, have him hurt. And then, in the grappling department, there's not many guys at 125 who are going to be able to come down and grapple with Royval. It's just not going to happen. The guy's not Royval, Pantoja. It's just not going to happen. The guy is so strong positionally. He works from position to position. He's always looking for the submission, does good ground and pound. But Royval is just wiry, man. He's so fast for one. His movement's crazy. He'll catch you with these crazy knees like we saw in Kansas City against Nicolau. And you just never know. He's kind of the wild card where you don't know what you're going to get. He's either going to, he might get hurt on the feet. You might be able to put him out, or he might come out like a bat out of hell, find a crazy submission, or knock you out himself. But I just think, all in all, Alexandre Pantoja, man, just too solid. His resume, he beaten Perez by submission in the first round, made it look easy. And Perez is a tough fighter. Like you said, he's already beat Royval by submission. Manel Kopp, Brandon Moreno, which he did get outstruck in the fight, but at the same time, taking Brandon Moreno down 6 times in 5 rounds, not an easy feat by any means at all. He's able to do that and, even scored the knockdown on Moreno. So he's just at too much of a high level for me to get behind Royval here. But if you are taking Royval, I can understand why with the odds being the way they are. I mean, you're probably getting some value on him. And if he beats Pantoja, you're probably never seeing odds like that again. But, for the pick, I got to go with Pantoja here. I'm a fan. He's a grinder. He's tough, and he can get it done any way possible. So I got to stick with him.
Yeah, I mean, if you like the Royval side, I'd probably take him inside the distance. But on the other side, it's like Pantoja's never been finished. He's never been knocked out, never been submitted. The guy is cast iron. So I think it's a really uphill battle for Royval. I mean, I know he's gotten some finishes as of late. That big knockout against Nicolau, the submission against Matt Schnell, and then he had a decision win against Rogerio Bontorin. He's only had 2 decision wins in his entire career. That was one of them. And coming into this one against Pantoja, it's like I like Pantoja. I thought Pantoja was going to beat Moreno, and he did. I know there's a lot of controversy around that fight. It was a split decision. I thought watching it live, I thought Pantoja won for sure. I thought he won at least 4 rounds. At least 3. I thought he won 4. So coming in here, I mean, with the line being where it's at, minus 170 for Pantoja is the same as when he beat Royval 2 years ago. Since then, Pantoja's beaten Perez. He's beaten Brandon Moreno. And then you look at Royval, what he's done since then. Beat Rogerio Bontorin, who's not even in the UFC. Beat Matt Schnell, he's not like a title contender type guy. I mean, he's top 10, but he's a bit chinny, and he's just probably 10 to 15 range for me. And then he beat Mateusz Nicolau on the knee, which I don't expect him to come in here and get another knee knockout. I mean, I don't want to say it was like fluky, but it's not something that you can really recreate, because it's like the Edwards Usman head kick. It's like not something that you can get every fight. So Royval is dangerous. He's dangerous on the feet. He's dangerous on the ground. But I think Pantoja is good enough defensively. I mean, at least he's shown. He's never been finished. So I think he's good enough defensively, very good offensively. I think Pantoja is going to defend the belt here. I think he'll be the pick for me. I don't mind the line whatsoever. So I like it. I like Pantoja this week. Welterweight bout. Stephen Thompson coming in at plus 425 against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Sitting at minus 625. Over under 1.5 rounds. Minus 180 for the over. Plus 150 for the under. Shavkat still undefeated. Still never seen the scorecards. All wins by finish. That is just super impressive for having 17 fights. Stephen Thompson, 17 wins for him. 6 losses and a draw. 3-2 in his last 5. You see the age difference there. 29 years of age for Shavkat and 40 years of age for Wonder Boy. This is a fun fight. I mean, it's a good test for Rakhmonov on the feet. Obviously, the path of least resistance would be to take Stephen Thompson down. But I don't know if Shavkat's going to do that. I mean, he showed in his last fight against Jeff Neal. He's willing to stand and bang it out. He did get the submission win in the 3rd round, but he was seen pretty dead set to, strike with Jeff Neal. So I don't know if he comes in here and does the same, or if he tries to take it to the ground early. But I would expect for him to come out and at least test his skills against Stephen Thompson on the feet. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, he's got to, in my opinion. And, first I'll start with Shavkat by saying, and you touched on it, 17 fights, 17 finishes. When he came into the UFC, I thought the streak of a 100% finish rate would disappear at some point, early in his UFC career once he got to this level. But he's still doing it against the Neil Magny's and Jeff Neal's, guys who are tough and hard to put away. And he's been able to find ways to do it. So that's super impressive. But as far as, skill for skill, if this thing stays on the feet, I don't think Shavkat looks like a minus 600 favorite in the least bit. I think if he's smart, he has to get to the grappling early, because if you leave Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in there fresh for 3 rounds without having to fin takedowns, he's going to make the fight close on the feet if he doesn't get knocked out. He's that good of a striker, possibly one of the best strikers we've ever seen in the UFC. He's just so technical and crafty, and he can hit you from anywhere he chooses. And it's a big mistake that even Kevin Holland played with him in their fight in Orlando. I was at that fight live, and I had Holland to win the fight, and he just never went to the grappling. He'd get him down and then just let him right back up because he wanted to prove a point, and he told him it was going to be a striking fight, and he followed through with that. And look what happened. He breaks his hand. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson puts, I don't know how many head kicks right on the chin, and finally gets the win via I guess technical stoppage. But if Shavkat does that, I think Shavkat's more powerful. If he lands right, he's going to put Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in some trouble. But if he doesn't land that shot and he can't get in close because of the kicks and the side kicks and the crafty striking that Wonderboy brings, I think he struggles with him a little bit. I think he struggles to find the chin, maybe until later in the fight. So, looking at this, I wouldn't be opposed to sprinkling a bet on Wonderboy Thompson to win by decision, just to see what the odds are. The odds are going to be big. If he's already a +4, 500, whatever he is right now, it's going to be a big number. And if he does win, I think that's how he wins. I think he just outpoints Shavkat, and if he gets his hand raised, that's how he does it. I do expect Shavkat to test the striking a little bit, but he wants to get this win at the end of the day. I don't see a world where he doesn't test the grappling at some point, or at least put Wonderboy up against the fence and make him fight in close where he's not as comfortable as he would be at range. Shavkat's going to be my pick to win. Betting wise, though, I think I have to sprinkle some Wonderboy props. Weird shit happens on pay-per-view cards, and it's happened all year long. It happened all year last year, and I don't see why this big card at the end of the year will be any different. We're going to see some weird shit happen.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that jumped off the board to me when I looked at those odds was the over 1.5, because Stephen Thompson's only been finished once in his entire career. That was against Anthony Pettis. But other than that, he's got, that's his only knockout loss. He's never been submitted. Shavkat, all wins by finish. I think he's going to run into a guy that's just super tough. And I think Shavkat probably comes out early, strikes with him, maybe finds out that, he's not levels above Stephen Thompson on the feet, and then looks to clinch a little bit more, look for some takedowns, and find his way into a fight where he can win more clearly. So I think Shavkat by decision is probably something I'll be eyeing. I don't know. I haven't seen a price on it yet, but with him being that big of a favorite, obviously it's not like something you can, play as like on a money line. You don't really want to take that. I mean, I guess you could throw it on a parlay, but you're not really adding too much there. So it's probably a fight you're going to have to look at some props if you don't like the Thompson side. I think Shavkat by decision could be a sneaky little bet there, because Thompson is just. I mean, we saw it against Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns. He lost those decisions. Those guys wrestled him up. I think that's a way that Shavkat could win this one. And Shavkat is tough too. I mean, he's been knocked down in his career, but obviously never been finished. He's never lost. So I think this one could be a 3-round fight that goes the distance. And Shavkat probably just going to mix in more weapons during the fight that I think he gets a decision win. But Stephen Thompson, we saw it against Kevin Holland, can still take big shots. Like, he took some big shots by Kevin Holland early in the round, in round one, and he was still able to stay with it and ultimately get the win there. So Shavkat by decision will be something I'm looking at. He'll be the pick for me. And we can move on if you don't got anything else.
Yeah.
Lightweight bout, Tony Ferguson coming in at +270 against Paddy Pimblett, set at -370. Over under 1.5 rounds, -220 for the over, +180 for the under. This is Tony Ferguson, 0-5 in his last 5. The man needs a win. Paddy Pimblett, 5-0 in his last 5. See the age difference there. I mean, we all know the story with Tony Ferguson. It's been a rough patch for him, but he's been training with David Goggins. Maybe that gives him a little bit of a boost here. We'll see. Paddy Pimblett, a year off. I think it was since yesterday. So he's trying to come back after that decision win, which a lot of people don't think he won. It was a close fight. I rewatched it. I mean, I think it's still kind of a toss-up. I probably would have gave it to Jared Gordon. But either way, he got the win by decision, had the injury. Now he's coming back against a legend in Tony Ferguson, trying to get a win, and he's a big favorite. What do you think about this fight? What do you think about the line?
Yeah, I can't really argue with the line just because not so much of what Patty is, but what we've seen out of Tony and how he's looked in some of his fights. And, the age is a factor, the wear and tear he's taken. So I can see where they're coming up with the line. But man, I wish this was like Tony 4 years ago and the line was like this because I'd be all over him here. I'm not a big hater on Patty in the least bit, but at some point I think he's gonna run into a guy who's just a little bit better than him at this point in his career. I haven't seen anything out of Patty that makes me believe he's getting better and better with every fight, in my opinion. And he comes into the UFC fighting two cans right off the bat. Like the two fights the UFC could give him that are solidified wins right off the bat, he gets Jordan Levitt, submits him. But I mean, Jordan Levitt's a good grappler with not the best submission defense. We just saw him get submitted by Chase Hooper in the first round as well. So the Jared Gordon fight kind of showed us a lot. Patty didn't run away with the striking with Gordon by any means. And on the ground, Jared was able to take him down 3 times, and Patty wasn't able to really get off much submission attempts or any offense off of his back. He did work back up to his feet well, which was good to see. But outside of that, like the fight was not as much action as I thought it would be. Patty wasn't really able to break free from Gordon in the grappling department and get back to the striking where he was landing good shots. And I think his chin isn't liable, but I think him getting hit is a liability. At some point, he's going to run into a big power puncher. He's going to be able to shut the lights off because he does take some big shots. He took big shots in some of his first fights against these guys that nobody's ever heard of. Tony Ferguson, though, just doesn't seem to have it anymore. Whatever it was that he had, it was the sharp striking where he'd hurt guys on the feet all the time and he would cut them up with the elbows and throw crazy pace on guys. It just doesn't seem to be as overwhelming as it once was. And you get submitted by Bobby Green in the 3rd round. That's something that would have never happened back in the day, ever. Loses to Nate Diaz by submission in the 4th round. That's kind of a toss-up. It's 2 guys who are at that age and aren't really in their prime anymore. But the KO versus Michael Chandler just is not, I don't know. It's not a bad look because Chandler is a beast. But at the same time, we see Tony Ferguson, who's never really been KO'd in his life, get flatlined like that. It just doesn't give me a good feeling going up against some of these younger guys. Like, sure, Tony could catch Patty and, if it goes to the ground, catch him in a weird submission. But I don't see him being fast enough. I don't see him having that speed advantage. And I just don't see the craftiness as much as I used to with Tony Ferguson. Yeah. And, overall, I think Patty Pimblett does win this fight. I don't know, man. I don't like the speed disadvantage in the youth here. If you're wanting Tony to win, I just don't really see it happening in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, the plus money on Tony definitely jumps off the board, and I'm kind of, when I looked at it, I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like Patty Pimblett minus 370, I couldn't get behind it whatsoever. But I mean, then you think, okay, well, Patty beat Jared Gordon, arguably, but he did win, and he was like minus 220, minus 240 against Jared Gordon. And I mean, would Jared Gordon beat Tony Ferguson at this point? Like, yes. Probably. Like, Jared Gordon's a good fighter. Like, he's a solid guy, and he'd probably beat Tony Ferguson at this point. So I can understand the line based on that. For Tony, it's just clear. Like, he just looks slower in there. There's no real defense on the feet. Like, he's pretty easy to hit. It's just weird stuff that he does in the cage doesn't really work anymore. Like it just doesn't work. Like he tried some stuff against Bobby Green, didn't look good. But on the Pimblett side, like the striking defense is terrible. Like just straight up 41% striking defense for Patty Pimblett. That's abysmal. Like that is just really bad. At some point, yes, somebody is going to clip him. He's been clipped before, but he's been able to take the shots. Tony, I don't know if he's got that big, knockout power left in him. If he does find the chin, maybe we see a little bit of a Patty Pimblett getting knocked down or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, Patty Pimblett is a very good grappler. And, based on the past 2 fights, Tony Ferguson's been submitted his past 2 fights. So it's not out of the realm that Patty could go in there and submit Tony Ferguson. Obviously, that's probably the best path to victory for him. Yeah. And at this point, I'm not too confident in Tony Ferguson's submission defense. And training with David Goggins, I don't think it was a great idea. I mean, maybe he needed that to get his mind right, but he's not really the guy that's, got his mind in different places and stuff. He's not really a guy that's, not mentally tough, but maybe it's just the confidence that he needs to go in there and get it done. But I think that probably just wore on his body even more. I mean, he's already got a ton of miles, 6 straight losses, been finished in 3 straight fights. I don't think that's a good thing for him. So Paddy Pimblett will be the pick for me. But I'm sure most people will be pulling for Tony to bounce back here, but I got to go with Paddy. Welterweight bout, Vicente Luque coming in at plus 275 against Ian Machado Garry, sitting at minus 375. Over under 1.5 rounds, minus 210 for the over, plus 170 for the under. The undefeated Ian Garry, 26 years of age. See the frame there, very good frame for the welterweight division, 6'3". Vicente Luque, 3-2 in his last 5. And he had that comeback fight against RDA earlier this year, picked up a win in the main event, and now he's stepping in against Ian Garry, which is a tough fight for anybody because we know this guy is super talented, and these guys are ex-teammates, which is an interesting thing because you don't see it too often. But I know it's not like Ian Garry's in the gym at Killcliff every day. He's bouncing around. Looks like he's been in Brazil a lot. He's just been around everywhere. So I don't think they've been in the gym at that recently with each other. Luque took some time off to deal with that brain bleed, which was concerning, but he showed in the fight against RDA. He can mix it up. He went to the grappling game a lot in that fight to get the decision win there. Big line here. Again, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's interesting because what's hard to believe is that Ian Garry is already 6 fights into his UFC career since 2021. Like the guy is active. He's always fighting, always training. He's like never really out of fight camp, it seems like. So I think he's going to be ready for a step up in competition like this. I think stylistically, if he can keep it on the feet, he's going to be favored here to win the striking battles. But Vicente Luque bounced back phenomenally in his fight against RDA. I was super impressed there. He was plus 105. I remember he was our pick of the week for the Double Leg Instagram, and gets 8 takedowns on Rafael dos Anjos, which is phenomenal considering the grappling and wrestling pedigree that RDA has. To land 8 takedowns was what impressed me most about him in that fight, and he was just relentless with it. He didn't gas out like I thought he might. He went all 5 rounds like that and was able to keep up with the pace. He outstruck RDA and just ultimately made that more interesting now that he's fighting Ian Garry for me to really take a look at him. Because for Ian Garry, he's obviously getting better. He hasn't fought the highest level of competition, but he's fighting, the mid-level guys right now. And this is going to be his first real jump up to a top guy. But Song Kanan, we saw him shit the bed against Giuseppe this past weekend, but Song was able to drop him with a shot that looked like Garry was out flatlined, out cold. When he hit the mat, he kind of woke up, survived to the bell, went on to win. Daniel Rodriguez, phenomenal performance, did what he had to. He's very good on the feet when he can download a little bit of data when he's striking with you, kick to the body, test out where your hands are going to be, use his jab to see how you react to it. And then from there, really pick his shots that are going to land and they're going to be very effective. Against Rodriguez, he would kick to the body and see that D-Rod's hands were dropping low. Then he came up high and caught him with the head kick. Like he's just so, I don't think he gets enough credit for how good of a striker he actually is. Neil Magny fight, he did what he had to. He beat the leg up. He got some takedowns. He put him up against the cage and just showed a well-rounded game. And he showed that he can grind out a decision win if he has to. Against Luque, though, man, I don't like what Jeff Neal did to Vicente Luque on the feet. I don't like that Vicente had never been really knocked out, and then he took that much damage, which realistically was not that. I mean, it was a little bit over a year ago, maybe 14 months ago, not that far removed. Or, if Ian Garry gets on a roll in the octagon against Luque and starts landing some of those big shots, I think he's only going to start snowballing and start fighting downhill and have more success. If Luque can't really get his respect early and he can't land the takedown early, I think Garry starts building off of it and starts looking really good by the second and third round in this fight, and he gets the win. I'd love to take Luque here. I've got to stick with Ian Garry. I think he really is has a lot of momentum on his side. Yeah, he's dealing with some shit in the media, but at the end of the day, you get in the cage all that goes out the window, and you're looking the guy straight in the face and you're ready to fight. So yeah, I got to stick with Ian Garry here, but I do think this could be a really, really fun fight.
Yeah, Ian Garry's got the skills to be a champion. Like, you watch him fight, and he looks like he has the cage management to be like he can do anything in there. He uses weapons very well, a lot of kicks, uses movement very well. He's only been taken down a few times in the UFC. Vicente Luque, it's not like he can't stand with Ian Garry, but the path of least resistance would probably be to take him down. And we saw in his last fight he's willing to do that. And watching that last fight with RDA, it looked like he was a little bit gun shy based on coming back from that brain bleed from Jeff Neal. It didn't really look like the old Vicente Luque, where he's willing to take one to give one, stand in the pocket, trade hands with you. Looked like a different fighter. So coming into this one, I'd probably expect him to go back to the takedown and try to do work there, because you watch the film on Ian Garry, it's like not really a guy you want to stand and strike with. And he's going to be smaller. He does have a reach advantage, but Garry uses his kicks like a jab, like a reach. I mean, he's going to try to keep you at distance very quick. And he does have fast hands too. I mean, he can get in and out of the pocket very quickly. So Ian Garry at this price is obviously not a bet that you're like dead set on. You're like minus 370 against, Vicente Luque has been around for a long time. Definitely Ian Garry's toughest test to date. And he's not an easy out. I mean, Luque's only been knocked out once against Jeff Neal, and it was in the third round. So, I mean, it took a lot of shots to get him out of there. Luque does have a good submission game as well. He had a couple Darce chokes before he went on that 2-fight losing streak. And if he does get Ian Garry to the ground, could snatch something up. But I think Ian Garry does keep this fight on the feet for the majority of the fight, and he just points him away. I mean, they're teammates. I don't think he wants to like kill Vicente Luque by any means, but all the stuff by the MMA fans and the MMA media, I'm sure he's probably going to want to look to put on some type of big performance in there. So another fight that I kind of like the over in. I know it's kind of chalky, minus 210, but I think these guys are tough, and I think this is a fight that probably goes the distance. So I like that too. But Ian Garry would be the pick for me. Featherweight bout, Josh Emmett coming in at plus 170 against Bryce Mitchell, sitting at minus 205. Bryce Mitchell stepping in on short notice to take on Josh Emmett. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 155 for the over, plus 125 for the under. Bryce Mitchell 4-1 in his last 5, only loss to Ilia Topuria. So it's not really something to shake your head at whatsoever. I mean, Ilia Topuria going to be fighting for a title. Look, I mean, he's still undefeated. Looks like an absolute killer. Josh Emmett, 3-2 in his last 5. Just coming off the loss to Ilia Topuria, where he got battered. And then the loss earlier this year where he took to Yair Rodriguez, got submitted. 38 years of age for Josh Emmett. Definitely getting up there. Definitely taking a lot of damage in his last 3 fights, really. I mean, Ilya, Yair, and then Calvin Kattar, which was, 5-round knock him out type of fight. So he's got a lot of miles on that chin. Bryce Mitchell, not really a heavy-handed guy, but he does have the ability to put some damage on you. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I look at both sides here. And for Josh Emmett, obviously, like you said, taking a lot of damage in his last few fights and being 38 years old to where, maybe the chin's not holding up as well. He doesn't take the damage as well and gets a little more tired in there when he is taking damage. And versus a guy who's basically coming off the couch on a couple of weeks' notice, who has phenomenal cardio when he's training for fights, which I expect him to his cardio to be fine probably in this one, but who doesn't really showcase the striking much at all. He more so uses certain shots to set up the takedowns. He's going to look to backpack you. He's going to look to find some submissions, land some ground and pound, and just be a dog in there and grind out decision wins or submission wins, or, even get the KO, TKO once he gets you down. But for Josh Emmett, like, he has a good wrestling background, but he's a guy, I'm trying to think of who he'd remind me of that, is a great wrestler, but just won't really show it in there. I want to say Gaethje, but a little bit different. But he has the ability to wrestle with guys, but he just won't go to it when he needs to. I mean, we saw it against Yair a little bit. It seemed like more desperation trying to get fights to the ground. He ends up getting submitted while Yair was off of his back. Topuria was able to take Josh Emmett down 3 times officially in that fight and just basically broke Josh Emmett down the whole entire fight. Now, if those guys are taking him down, I don't see why Bryce Mitchell doesn't either. He's the youthful guy in this fight by a long shot. He's very strong. He's got an insane grip. You can just tell if he gets his hands locked, you're going down. He showed it in the Dan Ige fight, taking him down 5 times. Now, if you look back to Dan Ige versus Josh Emmett, Ige was the one who was able to take Emmett down in that one. So just mixing all this stuff together, watching tape, makes me believe Bryce will get to the body. He will get the fight to the ground. And from there, I think Emmett could be in some serious trouble because once Bryce gets guys down, you're not really getting back up that many times. And mix that in with Emmett's age, it could be the X factor in this fight. But Josh does hold some power. And if Bryce can't get the fight to the ground right away, he's going to be in serious danger of getting hit with some big shots. We saw Dan Ige hit him with some big shots and really messed that eye up that I thought put the fight in danger of being stopped. Like if you looked at his eye after that big shot he took. So there's always a possibility Emmett comes out and starts swinging like that, hit him with some big power shots, and then it gets very, very interesting. But off short notice, I don't think Bryce messes around with it at all. I won't be surprised if the first 2 seconds of the fight, Bryce is shooting a double leg from the center of the octagon trying to get him down. And if he does that early and sets the tone that way, I think it's going to be a big mountain for Josh Emmett to overcome. And I think Bryce Mitchell will get his hand raised. So the pick for me is going to be Mitchell.
Yeah, it's kind of like a similar opponent for Bryce Mitchell based on his last 2 fights. Like Dan Ige, Josh Emmett, kind of a similar type of fighter, rely on their boxing. And then Ilia Topuria, kind of the same type of build as a Josh Emmett, but Topuria I think has a much better ground game defensively and offensively. And for Bryce Mitchell's only loss being Ilia Topuria, it's not really something that I would look at too deeply. But I think Bryce here just wrestles him for 3 rounds. If he doesn't, I think he probably submits him on the ground if he gets him there. But Josh Emmett, 46% takedown defense. It's he's not that hard to take down. And he's a guy that most fighters will look to just kind of stay out of that big overhand right and strike with him. It's not like guys are going in there and taking down a lot. Like a lot of the guys that he's fought are strikers and they're not really grapplers. So it's an interesting test for Josh Emmett at this point in his career, 38 years of age. I mean, we usually don't like to take guys that are probably near the end of their career, and I don't think I'll take him here. Bryce Mitchell will be the pick for me. Like you said, I think he probably just goes out there and shoots early, gets ahead early, kind of like he did against Edson Barbosa. It's like he hit him with 1 shot early, and then from there it was just get him down, wear on him, don't let him back up. He's got a great ground game, super high level ground game. He gets you down. It's going to be tough to get up. And if you get up, he's probably just going to go ahead and take you down right away. So I think it's a tough test for Josh Emmett, but Bryce Mitchell is on short notice. Got to take that into account. But I think he took it because it's a fight that he thinks he can win. And I think he does win it here. So Bryce Mitchell will be the pick for me. Bantamweight bout. Irene Aldana coming in at -190 against Carol Hosa, sitting at +160. Over under 2.5 rounds, -350 for the over, +250 for the under. Irene Aldana, first fight back after the brutality of a beating that she took by Amanda Nunes. But, she's getting a much bigger jump down in competition here against Carol Hosa, who's 28 years of age. So she's 7 years younger than Irene Aldana. She's also 3-2 in her last 5. But Aldana, she's been around for a while. I mean, she's fought a lot of good girls. Carol Hosa, probably can't say as much as the same as Irene Aldana. She's never been in a title fight. But it's an interesting fight. I mean, the line isn't too wide. Carol Hosa coming off the win to, what's her name?
Yana Santos.
Yeah, Yana Santos, which is it's not something I could really get behind. Before that, she had a loss to Norma Dumont and then a win over Lena Landsberg. So it's once you get past the top 3 or 4 in the women's bantamweight division, I think it drops off pretty quickly. So these are tough fights to really gauge because, Irene Aldana had a really bad performance against Amanda Nunes, but that's Amanda Nunes. And she's coming in here as a favorite, but not too big. Definitely a step down in competition. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's interesting to look at, Carol Hosa here wins over Yana Santos in a split decision. I mean, it was a split fight. It was close. She was outstruck in significant strikes by 30 significant strikes in that one. And Rosa just had one takedown, and the judges gave it to her by split. But before that, I mean, Yana Santos has lost to Holly Holm and Irene Aldana. So I don't know. I don't know. I look at Carol Rosa and I look at the Norma Dumont fight where she didn't really have an urgency to separate herself from Norma Dumont and really get the striking going. And it just made for kind of a stalemate of a fight. And against Irene Aldana, if she can't get her down to the ground and they're going to stand and trade shots, I do think Aldana is going to be the better striker, even though, like you said, she went in there against Amanda Nunes and got her ass beat. She looked hesitant, looked like the moment was too big, but she's a better fighter than what she displayed. And this is, she's coming off that loss. I think she bounces back well against a girl like Carol Rosa. I mean, you look at the skill difference between her last fight in Nunes and this one coming up at 296, and it's miles and miles long between the skills of each of those girls. So yeah, overall, I think Irene Aldana does walk away with it. She's got a 75% takedown defense if Carol Rosa does try to take the fight there. And at range, she's 5'9", fighting Rosa, who's 5'5". She's got a 1-inch reach advantage. She's a slicker striker, in my opinion. She's going to be harder to deal with. And volume-wise, she's going to land a little bit more as well, if I'm looking at the right thing. No, actually, sorry, Carol Rosa will land more volume, but both girls, get hit a fair amount as well. Overall, though, I mean, give me Irene Aldana. I don't think I'm playing this fight at chalk in women's MMA by any means, but I do think the level of competition and the skill gap is just going to go to Aldana.
Yeah, I mean, Aldana will be the pick for me too. I mean, that fight with Nunes, it just looked like she was scared to engage in anything on the feet, and then she'd get taken down and she'd take some damage there. And it just really wasn't a fight where she could get going. Like, it wasn't really a fight where I don't think she ever really got going. On the feet, she does have some good boxing. That's really where she does her work. I mean, as of recently, she's been getting taken down a good amount, which kind of scares me. If you're going to bet the chalk on her. Carol Rosa doesn't really impress me when I watch her fight. I mean, she's not super high volume. She does have some decent power. She knocked down Norma Dumont, but after that, I mean, she doesn't really have like a killer mentality. Like, she will hit you, but I mean, she's not really going to do much after that. She used her wrestling a lot against Lena Landsberg to pick up the win there. And the fight against Yana Santos, she looked pretty slow. And I think Irene Aldana should be able to stay to the outside, use her boxing, and pick up a win here. So she'll be the pick for me. Bantamweight bout, Cody Garbrandt coming in at -220 against Brian Kelleher, sitting at +180. Over under 2.5 rounds, -120 for the over, -110 for the under. 37 years of age. For Brian Kelleher, has been around for a while. Cody Garbrandt, 32. The former champ is 2-3 in his last 5. Picked up a win his last time out against Trevin Jones. And he's getting another unranked guy here in Brian Kelleher. I think it's a good matchup. I think it's it's not throwing Cody back into the mix where he could get chinned again, but Brian Kelleher, been around for a while, veteran, and a game opponent. And if you look at Brian Kelleher's last few fights, I mean, he's not taking easy fights. Mario Batista and Umar Nurmagomedov, those are his last 2 losses, his last 2 fights. Before that, wins over Kevin Kroom, Domingo Pilarte, who are neither of them are in the UFC anymore. But yeah, I mean, this is an interesting fight. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, there's a few things that Cody Garbrandt's going to have to do in every single fight going forward if he wants to get some more wins. One, keep his composure, get out of these firefights. I know you have a lot of power, Cody, but the chin's just not there as much anymore. And at this weight class, guys are so fast that they're going to hit you with shots you don't see coming. And Brian Kelleher is no exception to that, in my opinion. He's got the ability to go out there and land big shots. He's, somewhat fast, probably not as fast as he used to be, being that he's 37 years old now. But the guy's a scrapper. He's not going to shy away from the gunfight like that. For Cody, too, I wish he'd mix in the wrestling again. The guy has a phenomenal wrestling pedigree. He's credentialed in that sport. And in the UFC, he's fallen in love with the striking, which is fine. But when you start getting tagged up like he has in his career in the last 7 fights, you got to stick to your bread and butter, and you got to get back to what really, really wins you fights. For Brian Kelleher, I mean, the guys he's fighting, Mario Batista, Umar Nurmagomedov. I mean, like you said, there's no easy fight that he's taken lately. And this really isn't an exception because Cody Garbrandt on an on night, it looks like the best in the world. He looked good in his last fight, and he's going to come in here against Kelleher and probably the same approach as he did against Trevin Jones. And he did look very good in that fight. The one thing that would worry me if you are betting on Cody Garbrandt or taking him in this fight is that Kelleher is well-rounded enough to find the finish from anywhere. Obviously, I talked about the chin issues that Garbrandt's had. That's one way. But if Garbrandt does go for the wrestling, Kelleher's got a nasty guillotine. He's caught guys in it before. He's got a phenomenal squeeze, and he's a good wrestler himself. And Gas Tank seems to be damn good as well. So, anywhere this fight goes, I think it will be somewhat competitive. Cody only being 32 here versus Kelleher at 37. I do lean Cody to win this fight if he can stay safe. I think he will have the speed advantage. The striking is going to be a lot more technical. It's also flashy. His defensive head movement is good up until he just starts trading with guys. So if he's learned anything at all, Cody Garbrandt should go in there and put on a very, very good performance. There's always that chance though that he just gets a little too cocky and wants to put on a show and then he gets put out. But overall, I think Cody Garbrandt gets back on a little winning streak here for a second in a row, and he'll be the pick for me.
Yeah, I think you're giving him a little bit too much credit against Trevin Jones because he landed 26 significant strikes against Trevin Jones. It looked like he was a little scared to engage. He mixed in the wrestling, landed 2 of 3 takedowns, and ended up winning the fight basically off of that. Won the first round, won the second round, kind of coasted in the third round. Maybe just because he was up 2 rounds and he wanted to get that win under his belt that he hadn't had in a while. But in this one, Cody Garbrandt definitely going to have to be aware of that guillotine if he does want to wrestle because Brian Kelleher, like you said, got a nasty guillotine. Does have the ability to submit him on the ground. But Brian Kelleher has also been submitted 8 times in his entire career. Cody Garbrandt never had a win by submission. Something maybe I'll be looking at if that submission prop is just out of this world good enough to take, maybe something I'll be looking at. But I think Cody Garbrandt gets the win here. It does scare me just based on his last fight. He just looked super scared to engage. And Trevin Jones isn't good. Like, he's just not good whatsoever.
Cut after that fight, I believe, right?
I'm pretty sure he was cut. So it's not really something that I'm super high on Cody Garbrandt at chalk, but Brian Kelleher is game, but he just doesn't really beat like very good guys, so takes hard fights, but he doesn't always, get the wins against the harder fights. So Cody Garbrandt will be the pick for me. Flyweight bout, Casey O'Neill coming in at -195 against Ariane Lipski, sitting at +165. Over under 2.5 rounds, -240 for the over, +200 for the under. Casey O'Neill, 4-1 in her last 5, picked up her first loss of her career last time out against Jennifer Maia. Ariane Lipski, 3-2 in her last 5, and she's on a nice little win streak here. She's 3 years older than Casey O'Neill. Casey O'Neill came off of the knee injury her last time out and picked up her first loss. It was kind of a disappointing loss for her. She just pretty much got outboxed by Jennifer Maia. It was a fight where they landed a ton of significant strikes. 137 for O'Neill, 145 for Jennifer Maia. I think she clearly lost. But before that, wins over Roxanne Manaferi, Antonina Shevchenko, and then 2 girls you probably never heard of. So I don't really know where to price Casey O'Neill because she is still fairly young in her career. And that fight against Jennifer Maia didn't really look like she had much of a game plan. I mean, she just kind of stood up and boxed with her. And she has a decent ground game, but she didn't really look to use it there. Ariane Lipski, 2-fight win streak. She looked really good against J.J. Aldrich as a dog. She was a dog again against Melissa Gatto. Got another win by split there. It's an interesting fight. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, it's very interesting because for Lipski, she impressed me in the fight against Gatto. Not just because she, won. It was a close fight, split decision, but going up against Gatto, who has power, has got knockouts at this level before, and her only other loss was Tracy Cortez. She went in there and she made Gatto fight off the back foot. She was able to put the pressure on her. She landed some good, significant strikes, landed a takedown, and just showed a good, well-rounded game. And then Aldrich is nothing to, brag about by any means, but she is a fighter who does, rack up wins in the UFC by, being boring. She's not the most exciting fighter. Lipski was able to make her look like an amateur in that fight. Outlanded her by over 50 significant strikes, had a couple of takedowns, and comfortably won the fight. But going up against Casey O'Neill, I think she's got to keep it on the feet because Casey O'Neill is a grappler at her base. She's a good wrestler. She's got great grappling. She doesn't always show it and hasn't really shown it in the UFC. But if she stands and trades with Lipski, it's going to look like a pick'em fight, I think. I don't think it's going to look like Casey O'Neill deserves to be the big favorite. We saw it against Jennifer Maia. She just got outclassed in that fight, in my opinion. She landed some shots, but they just weren't they weren't replicable of Jennifer Maia's. Maia landed the cleaner ones, the more powerful ones, and was the rightful winner, in my opinion, there too. For O'Neill, though, I don't know if you see this picture floating around Instagram of, the scars and stuff on her knee from the surgery she's had, and somebody with an inside source saying the knee's never going to be the way it was. She's always going to struggle with that kind of injury, and it's never going to be back to 100%. Like, that's a big hit to her if you're this kind of fighter who wants to grapple a little bit, but I don't know how you plant as well in the striking. I don't know if she's going to be as fast twitched, if she's going to have the speed over girls like she has in the past. So that makes me worry against Lipski here too. I think Casey O'Neill has the ability to go out there and win a decision here, but at the price and these odds, I think this is going to look more like a pick'em fight, in my opinion. I don't think this is going to look like Casey O'Neill at a decent sized favorite here. I do think it could be a buy low spot for her where she's going to bounce back and look way better than she did in the Maia fight. But at the same time, this is women's MMA with one girl in O'Neill who's not that proven, and another girl in Lipski who does have knockout losses, decision losses, and a handful of wins too, where you just never really know what you're going to get. For the pick, I'm going to go dog or pass. I'm going to go with Lipski here just because if you're going to give me a decent-sized underdog in a fight where I think the odds should be closer to pick them, I got to take the big plus money. So Ariana Lipski's it for me.
Yeah, it's Lipski's had a little bit of a resurgence because early in her career, she took 2 knockout losses to Antonina Shevchenko and Martina De La Rosa, which was kind of just taking her down and beating her up. And it looked like the ground game was just not there whatsoever. Comes back, gets a win against Mandy Bohm. Doesn't matter. Mandy Bohm's pretty bad. And then she takes a knockout loss against Priscilla Cachoeira. And then since then, her last 2 fights, she's looked really good. And she stuffed every takedown. And I think that was a big part of her success. Because if she gets taken down, she didn't really look very good. So I think that's probably something she worked on a lot. And on the feet, she is a very good striker. She is very good counterpunching. She's fast. She uses her weapons well. She did get outstruck by Melissa Gatto, but still was able to get the win there. Landed the more cleaner shots. Pretty easy win against JJ Aldrich. And going up against Casey O'Neill, I think she just tries to get in this volume type win.
Mm-hmm.
She just goes out there and throws hands, tries to land more than you can. If Lipski wants to win this fight, I think she's got to just counter her very well, just land the more significant strikes. If she gets into a volume type battle, I think she'll probably lose because Casey O'Neill can rack up the volume very quickly. But if Lipski can stay to the outside, use her movement very well, crack her with some counters, avoid getting taken down, I think she's got a really good shot to win this fight. I think she'll be the pick for me. Casey O'Neill at this chalk, I don't really like him. It's women's MMA. We've seen it the past how many weeks, this whole year, really. It's you're probably better off just taking the dog in women's MMA fights. So I'll take Ariane Lipski for the pick. Light heavyweight bout, Dustin Jacoby sitting at -250 against Alonzo Menifield, sitting at +200. Over under 1.5 rounds, -205 for the over, +170 for the under. 35 years of age for Dustin Jacoby, 36 years of age for Alonzo Menifield. Jacoby 3-2 in his last 5. Menifield 3-1-1. Menifield picking up the win over Jimmy Crute in the rematch his last time out. We were there for that one. Dustin Jacoby picking up another big first-round knockout win for him his last time out against Kennedy and Nzechukwu. But before that, had 2 straight losses against Azamat Murzakanov and Khalil Roundtree. So this is a fun fight. I love this fight. Light heavyweights are always fun to watch. Jacoby, very good kickboxer. Menifield got a lot of power in those hands. If he hits you, you're definitely going to feel it. seems like as of recently, he's mixed in the wrestling here and there. He had that win over that one guy, Askar Mazarov, where he just took him down and just brutalized him on the ground. And then a knockout win against Sirkunov, the draw against Jimmy Crute, and then the win by submission, which was interesting because he's not really a submission guy. He does have a Von Flue choke over Fabio Charant, but he's a guy that's, I guess, cornered by Pat Barry now, which is interesting. But what are you thinking on this one? I mean, Jacoby minus 205 and Menifield as a dog. Menifield as a dog, not always the worst play. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, for sure. Overall, though, if you're betting on this fight, I think this is prop city. I think you can almost read a couple of ways this fight could go, and you're going to get decent price on him. For Menifield, I look up and down his record, and his only notable great win is the Paul Craig knockout back in 2019. Other than that, he's beaten Ed Herman, Askar Mozarov, Misha Sirkunov, and Jimmy Crute. And Jimmy Crute retired after that last fight at 290 at 27 years old, and he looked awful in it. Menifield, obviously the power is evident, puts guys out, but if he doesn't do it early, he struggles a little bit later in rounds. And we saw it with Crute. Him and Crute were both exhausted, such a high pace. And if he fights that way against Jacoby and he doesn't get the early knockout, I think he's in serious, serious trouble to be put out in the later rounds by Jacoby. Even you look back at Alonzo Menifield back in 2021, losing to William Knight. He got taken down once, controlled, and just did not look good in that fight. And everybody knows what William Knight's doing these days. Lost to Oven St. Peru in 2020. OSP's damn near a dinosaur at this point, and he's losing that fight. I just don't know if the power is going to be enough here against Jacoby. With Alonzo is 6 foot tall, Jacoby standing at 6'3" with a 76-inch reach. And at one point, Dustin Jacoby is one of the best kickboxers on planet Earth. He's been in there in glory against Alex Pereira and guys of that caliber. And I don't see Alonzo coming in here and having a wrestling heavy game plan. I think he's going to look to land the big shot. And Dustin Jacoby, if you want to play the kickboxing and striking game with him, and that's all you got, it's going to be a hard night at the office for anybody. So I think Jacoby wins this fight. And if it's not a round one knockout for Alonzo, if he gets tired at all and Jacoby starts kneeing up the middle and kicks to the body, I think there's a very good chance Jacoby wins this fight in the second round or the third round. And I'll be very interested to see what those odds are by KO. Because again, Jacoby loses the fight to Azamat Murzakanov in Kansas City, which we were at, and we were rooting for Jacoby, and it was just something was off with him that night. Fight before that, loses to Khalil Roundtree, who's probably getting a title eliminator fight in his next fight. And, everybody, I think the whole media and everybody at home agreed that Dustin Jacoby deserved to win that fight. The numbers were lopsided, everything. And before that, he's knocking out Jung, Mikhail Oladzejczyk, took him and beat him by decision. John Allen, Darren Stewart, like the guy who does not lose that much in the UFC, especially striking battles. I think this is another striking battle. I think Jacoby's going to have the better volume, the better cardio, and I think he'll get the late round finish here.
Yeah, I think both fighters going to be super dangerous in that first round. Jacoby usually, if he gets a knockout, it's in the first round. Menifield, powerful in the first round, but the longer the fight goes, definitely favors Jacoby. Menifield, we saw it against Crute. The gas wasn't really there. The fight IQ, probably not there. Jacoby, very, very smart fighter, very technical. And he has the ability to put a lot of volume on you, does have power as well. I think Jacoby gets this one done. And I do kind of like the later finish because he hasn't really shown much of that, but Menifield can gas out, and Jacoby good for 3 rounds. We know that. Like he's going to be there for 3 rounds. Against Murzakanov, he was a little bit tired, but he still was able to rally back in that fight and make it closer. So I think Jacoby's just got more ways to win this fight. He'll be the pick for me. Flyweight bout, Tagir Ulanbekov sitting at minus 170 against Cody Durden, sitting at plus 140. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 240 for the over, plus 200 for the under. Both men 4-1 in their last 5. Both men 37 years of age. Both men 5'7". But Tagir Ulanbekov 3-inch reach advantage. Cody Durden on a nice win streak. Last fight, Jake Hadley picked up a win there in enemy territory, and that was a fight where he was a dog in. He was a dog against Charles Johnson, got that one done. Was a dog against Carlos Mota, got that one done. So 3 straight dog cashes for Cody Durden. Finds himself in the same spot against Tagir Ulanbekov, who last got a win against Nate Maness back in November of 2022 by a standing guillotine choke. So it's definitely something Durden will have to be aware of, the submission threat of Ulanbekov. But what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, if you like grappling, this is the fight for you, in my opinion. Both guys are high level. It's going to be a fun fight to watch. Two guys that are tough for one, and just have cardio for days. It seems like I know Durden has slowed down in fights where he's just put out this ridiculous amount of takedown attempts, but it's gotten better, and I think it's produced wins for him on his record. You look, like you said, 4-fight win streak, and each guy is just progressively getting better. He knocks out JP Buys. He goes in and gets the decision against Mota, Charles Johnson, and decision against Jake Hadley, which is the fight that really made me think like Cody Durden's for real, because Jake Hadley is a pretty highly touted prospect coming into the UFC. Took a loss, but since has looked pretty good. And Jake Hadley's very, very well-rounded. He's great on the feet. He's good with the submission game and the wrestling. And Cody Durden was just better than him and a step better on every single aspect of mixed martial arts. It was a fight that, for me, Cody Durden looked like he'd made a lot of improvements in the striking department. He was countering well. He looked fast, and the pace was just incredible. And the toughness, and he's got the dog in him, man. I mean, he had that armbar. Jake Hadley had that armbar sunk in so deep for about a minute, and Cody Durden wouldn't tap. I mean, the ref was looking like the ref was an inch away from his face, just waiting for him to yell tap and stop the fight. And Durden turned around and had a phenomenal third round. So he has no quit in him. I've seen Tagir dropped against Tim Elliott, of all people. Tim Elliott was able to go in there and drop Tagir. Tim Elliott was able to take him down 3 times and land nearly 80 significant strikes on him. Tim Elliott's a guy that resembles Cody Durden for me. They got a good gas tank, always foot on the pedal, trying to get the fight to the mat, awkward on the feet a little bit, fast, and just will grind out wins any way they can. And that's the style you have to beat Tagir Ulanbekov, in my opinion. Tagir comes out of that Khabib camp. We've seen Khabib in his corner before, probably not anymore, but he's got that style where he's going to look to grapple a little bit. He's good with it too, and he's pretty fast on the feet. He doesn't hold like a ton of pop or power, but he is fast and he's crafty. I think this is a very good fight. I think it's a close fight. Again, this is another fight where if you're going to give me, plus 130, plus 140 on Cody Durden, I'm going to take it because I think the line should be right at pick'em. And the way Cody has all this momentum going for him versus Tagir, who's been off since November of 2022. That's over a year now. I think Cody Durden's got it going for him. So I'm going to take him for the pick. I'm going to take him as a dog here.
Yeah, I love watching Cody Durden fight. I mean, the guy's a dog. It's pretty hard to dislike this guy because he's so tough and just goes in there like a junkyard dog every fight. He wants to win every fight, and he will die trying. And the way that he's won his last few fights is just grinding guys out, basically to the point where they're like, I don't want to be in here with this guy anymore. So Tagir Ulanbekov's got a tough fight ahead of him. But for him, he's got a couple really nice wins in the UFC. Alan Nascimento, Bruno Silva, 2 guys that I think pretty highly of. Took the loss to Tim Elliott and then beat Nate Maness in his last fight. So in this one, Cody Durden definitely going to try to get the takedowns. I think he'll be able to get them, and he's got a 50% takedown accuracy. So he's pretty accurate with him. Tagir has been taken down a good amount of times in his UFC career. 4 times by Bruno Silva, 3 times by Tim Elliott, 61% takedown defense for Tagir. Cody Durden, I think he's got pretty underrated power on the feet too. I mean, you're so conscious of that wrestling that sometimes you'll leave your chin open. Cody Durden can land some good shots. And just looking at like his UFC fights, like they're not tough guys, or they're not easy guys. Like he's fighting some pretty tough guys. The losses to Makayev, he got kneed there and then got submitted by guillotine. And then since then, he's been on a run. But he's also fought Chris Gutierrez, and he took him to a draw, which is pretty impressive, as we've seen Gutierrez in the top 15 of the bantamweight division. So I think Cody Durden as a dog is definitely a solid play. And I'll take him for the pick because he will fight for your money by any means. Like, he's not going to go out there and quit. and he's most likely going to make the other guy quit. So he'll be the pick for me. Featherweight bout, Lucas Almeida coming in at plus 145 against Andre Fili, sitting at minus 175. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 125 for the over, minus 155 for the under. Andre Fili on a bit of a rough patch in his career, but he's still the favorite here against Lucas Almeida, who took a loss. His last time out against Pat Sabatini, he got taken down, and pretty much it was over at that point. I mean, Lucas Almeida doesn't have the best defensive ground game, and he's got some good submissions off his back, but Pat Sabatini, a guy that's going to press his chest into yours, not allow any type of space for you to create anything, and got the submission win there pretty easily. So coming in here against Andre Fili, I would expect this fight to probably play out on the feet for majority of it. Andre Fili could mix in the takedowns, but I don't think Lucas Almeida is going to be shooting anything. Almeida made his debut back in 2022, picked up a win over Trezano, a round 3 KO. So he's got a solid frame for the division. So does Andre Fili. Lucas Almeida, pretty solid striking as well. So what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, Andre Fili is so hard to break down and predict because he's a guy who's got all the tools and he's got the skills to get wins in the UFC. But lately, like you said, kind of a rough patch. But when I look at the rough patch and I dig a little deeper and you look at the names he's losing to, it's Sadiq Youssef, Bryce Mitchell, Daniel Pineda, which ended up being a no contest, Joe Anderson Brito, who we just saw, submit JSP, and Nathaniel Wood, who was, before his last loss to Naimov, was a pretty highly touted prospect. And even in that fight, Fili came out hot and almost finished it right off the bat. Like, looked very, very good, got the knockdown, and eventually goes on to lose the fight. But wins over Bill Algeo, Charles Jourdain, I mean, those are good wins there. The one thing that I wish he would do in this fight against Almeida is just implement the wrestling. He's at Team Alpha Male. He's surrounded by killers in the wrestling department. We've seen him get takedowns on Bill Algeo, which is not an easy feat. Takedowns on Daniel Pineda, 5 on Charles Jourdain, 3 on Sadiq Youssef. Those are powerful, big, strong guys, and he's able to drag them down. If he can do that here against Almeida, I think he will have a lot of success. Like you said, Almeida was taken down, controlled, and submitted by Pat Sabatini pretty easily in that fight. And I don't think Fili's necessarily going to go out there and submit Almeida, but if you take him down enough times and you get him a little tired, then you can open up your striking on the feet, because Fili does have power in his hands. We see him knock guys down all the time. His striking is sharp. He's long, has great kicks. It's just, if you get in the firefight early in the fight with Almeida, you run the risk of getting your chin checked, because Almeida does have some very good power in striking. I'm going to stick with Fili here. I think he does get the win, but if I'm betting, I'm definitely looking at an Almeida KO prop. Just because of what we've seen out of Fili lately. He does tend to, leave his chin out there a little bit when he strikes and he throws the kicks. The hands come down, and sometimes he gets countered over the top or with the hooks. And that's this type of style that Lucas Almeida is going to look to implement. We saw it against Trezano, devastating power, really rocked him and hurt him and got the finish. So if it stays striking, it's a close fight. If Fili's smart, I think he does try to grapple up Almeida and see what the gas tank's got and see what the ground game's got here. But I'm going to take Andre Fili to pull it off.
Yeah, I think path of the least resistance would be to take Almeida down. But Fili's not really like a guy that's going to shoot a bunch. Right. He'll stand with you for the majority of the fight, maybe mix it in here and there. Landed 1 against Bill Algeo, 1 against Daniel Pineda. But other than that, I mean, yeah, he landed 5 against Charles Jourdain, but those are his fights in 2020. So he's not really the guy that's going to be shooting a bunch. And on the feet, I think it's probably more close to a pick'em. I mean, I think Fili, he's shown he can get knocked down recently. I mean, he got knocked down by Nathaniel Wood, knocked down by Brito, which are 2 guys with some solid pop. But Almeida's got some solid pop too. I mean, he mixes his weapons really well too, with the hands, with the kicks. And Trezano kind of got beaten up on the feet by him. So if this fight's on the feet, I think Almeida's definitely live. And Fili's not a big high volume guy. Almeida does have some pretty solid volume. I mean, put up 96 against Zellhuber, 75 against Trezano. On the feet, he really is able to hit guys. And I think in this fight, I'm going to take Almeida for the pick. I mean, maybe a buy low spot too, because he just took that bad loss to Sabatini. And Fili has been fighting some pretty good competition. So, I mean, you can't really knock him for taking these losses. But for the pick, I'll take Almeida as a dog. We're going to need some dogs on here, and Almeida's a decent one for me, so I'll take him. Heavyweight bout, Shamil Gaziev sitting at plus 150 against Martin Buday, sitting at minus 180. Over under 1.5 rounds, minus 200 for the over, plus 165 or the under. The undefeated Shamil Gaziev making his UFC debut at 33 years of age. Buday, 32 years of age, and has not lost in the UFC. 5-0 in his last 5. Gaziev fought on the Contender Series this season, and he picked up a win in the first round via rear naked choke. Sat him down with a nice shot and then got on top of him and submitted him. But, I mean, look at who he fought. It's not like anybody crazy. The guy that he fought was Greg Velasco, who was much smaller, a little bit, chubbier. And Buday's a big guy. And I mean, they're both big guys. They're both 6'4", every bit of 265. So heavyweight, lower level, but not like super low level where you're like, yeah, it's just like greasy. I don't want to get too involved. I mean, Buday has picked up some good wins, but Gaziev being thrown into a decent opponent here in Buday. What are you thinking?
Yeah, at the beginning of the breaking down all the fights and watching film, like I really wanted to take Gaziev as a dog here. He's got great. I don't even want to say his cardio is great for that big of a dude, but first half of fights, he's in there. He throws good volume. He's very powerful, and if he does get on top of you, he's very good with his control. He's very heavy on top. And if you watch some of his fights, like the dude lands some devastating elbows and ground and pound. He's just a very strong guy to get caught underneath like that. But when I look at his record, before the Contender Series, he fought in Brave, got some wins. But before that, he's fighting guys that are 2-0, 1-0, 0-0, and that's in 2021, just 2 years ago. And then after those wins like that, they give him a guy who's 13-0-1, and he goes to a split decision with them. So it makes me wonder, like, how he's really going to pan out against guys at the UFC level. Like Martin Buday doesn't blow you away with anything he does, but he's solid with everything he does. 100% takedown defense. It's not going to be easy to get him down by any means. He throws 5.62 significant strikes per minute for a heavyweight. That's a good number for a heavyweight. That's some great volume, considering that 3 of his 4 fights in the UFC have gone to a decision. So that means, he can kind of keep up the pace longer than most heavyweights as fights go on. So if you can't put him out, which nobody has, you're going to be in some trouble, if he makes this fight extended. In his last fight against Josh Parisian, who's not that good, he did exactly what he had to do. He went in there, he landed a lot of significant strikes, he got the takedown, and he finished him with a round 1 sub. I liked seeing that out of him. He showed a lot more urgency in that fight than he has in the past. So, overall, I think he's just going to get a little bit better each time in there, show us a little more. And being 6'4", 265 is not going to be an easy guy to go in there and bully like you'd think Gaziev is going to try to do, or he's going to need to do to get the win. All that being said, I think Buday is going to be able to stuff any takedown attempts. On the feet, he's going to have the volume. He's going to have the better cardio. And overall, he's just going to be just a little bit better of a fighter. This is sloppier heavyweight fighting, though. And I think Gaziev will be the sloppier guy. And I think Buday will be the more technical, composed, and just more well-rounded here and able to fight wherever it goes. So I think Buday does get the win here. This is definitely a massive, massive step up for Gaziev as far as competition goes.
Yeah, this is like I'd like Buday, but then I look at who he beat in the UFC. Like, yes, they're UFC fighters, but they're the bottom of the barrel. Like Parisian, Kelleher, Dresky, Chris Barnett. Like those were his UFC. That's like probably the 4 worst guys in the UFC heavyweights. So
yeah,
I don't like that, and it almost feels like a Buday is like a stock you want to get rid of because he's on that win streak, but he's just not really beating very good guys. Gaziev, he's fought some decent guys. Like Darko Stosic was in the UFC, not anymore. He's in KSW. He's been doing some good stuff in KSW. And then this guy, Kirill Kornilov, who's 15-1-1, his only losses to Gaziev, is a decent opponent as well. So I'm almost tempted to just, take Gaziev as an underdog because it's heavyweights, and Buday is a guy that I feel like is a guy you want to fade eventually. Maybe this is the point. But Gaziev making his debut, it's like, I don't know how it will look against, Buday, who's been in there before. But I mean, it's kind of a time that Gaziev's got to go. I mean, he's 33 making his debut. So for the pick, I'll take Gaziev. I just don't really like the chalk on Buday because in a lot of these fights, it's like he can get hit, he can take a punch, but he can get hit. He can get hit a lot. I mean, he took 118 from Dresky, 94 from Kelleher. Like, these are pretty close fights. Split decision to Dresky and a pretty close fight against Kelleher. So I think the value's on the dog here, and you're just taking a shot on a heavyweight guy that has looked good on the regional scene. He's undefeated. Plus money on an undefeated fighter is never a bad thing. So I'll take Gaziev for the pick. The first fight of the night, a welterweight bout, Randy Brown sitting at -250 against Muslim Salikhov, sitting at +200. Over under 1.5 rounds, -265 for the over, +215 for the under. Randy Brown, 4-1 in his last 5. Salikhov, 3-2. You see the age difference there, 39 years of age for Salikhov, 33 for Randy Brown. And that 6'3" frame for the welterweight division, pretty good. 78-inch reach for Randy Brown, 8-inch reach advantage. I mean, he uses it pretty well. I mean, he's a guy that wants to stay to the outside. He's quick, light on his feet, and kind of just looks to out-volume you, maybe land some bigger shots, but seems to find himself in some pretty close fights. I mean, the fight against Wellington Turman, looks like he won the first 2 rounds, drops the third, picks up a win. Fight against Trinaldo, another close fight that really didn't need to be close. A split decision against Chaos Williams. It's just a guy that you're betting chalk on that you're not like, a for sure thing. Muslim Salikhov is as game as they come. He is a little bit older, but his losses in the UFC, or at least in the last 5 years, are to Nicholas Dalby, who we've seen as an absolute dog, and then Li Jingliang, who's up there with the pack. So he's not like taking bad losses by any means. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. For Salikhov, like being almost 40 years old scares me against a guy like Randy Brown. Just being the fact that Randy Brown goes to a lot of decisions. He's going to be there for all 3 rounds if you don't knock him out. He'll work the body well. We've seen Salikhov, like against Dalby, got tired, but at the same time, Dalby's just like a cardio machine where you're gonna fade against Dalby if you go the distance. Li Jingliang, he was getting tired in that one too, was getting pieced up, and then he finally, gets TKO'd in the second round. And then he KOs Fiallo in between those 2 losses, which Andre Fiallo, we've learned, is on, I want to say, was it 4 fights in a row now he's been KO'd, or 5?
Yeah.
Just gets KO'd by everybody. So it's kind of hard to gauge where Salikhov really is, like what his true level is right now as being almost 40 years old. Because the guys he's fighting, not a good matchup in Dalby and Li Jingliang, and then he knocks out a guy who's losing to everybody. Randy Brown, though, it's almost disappointing how big he is, 6'3", 78-inch reach, and he's just not producing these big shots and knockouts like you would expect him to. We saw Jack Della go in there and submit him in the first round, which was surprising. Everybody had the KO if you were on Jack Della in that one. So you can get grappled up a little bit. Same thing with Vicente Luque. He just was kind of outmatched in the striking department, didn't have the power to hang with him. Luque was able to get a couple knockdowns and then put him out. Overall, though, I just have a feeling Randy Brown's going to keep the same pace for 3 rounds. Salikhov might be capable of the big shot early, but as the fight goes on, I see him slowing down a little bit. And 5'11" versus 6'3" and a 8-inch reach advantage, it's going to be hard when you're a little bit tired to really find the chin as the fight gets a little bit longer and into the deeper rounds. And I think Randy Brown will probably start to take over. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for Muslim Salikhov to start shooting sloppier takedowns as he gets tired. And we've seen Randy Brown with the length and those long arms snatch up the neck and put guys to sleep via submission. So that's going to be a prop I'm looking at in this fight. Definitely don't trust Randy Brown as a big chalky favorite. And I'm not confident enough in Salikhov at this age to put the money on him as a dog here either. But that submission prop is just, I've been thinking about it for a couple days now, and I'll be interested to see what the line is when it comes out. So give me Randy Brown for the pick.
Yeah, I'm always tempted on that submission prop for Randy Brown, but it
Yeah.
just seems like as of recently, it just hasn't been working out. So I'm like, do I got to keep going to the well or what? But yeah, I mean, Randy Brown should most likely be able to dance around the outside, do his thing there, use his quickness as an ability to score points from the outside and keep his opponent from getting inside, so he can't do too much damage. Muslim Salikhov, I mean, probably would try to look for some takedowns here. I mean, he does mix it in. He's landed a takedown in each of his last 4 fights. So if he does that, I mean, we saw it against Wellington Turman. Like, Turman was able to hit him a few times, look for some takedowns, didn't get any, but it was able to throw him up against the cage. And I think that's a spot where Randy Brown tends to get bullied a little bit when he's up against the cage. He's a skinnier guy, 6'3" at 170, not super strong. Does have the ability to land those clinch strikes, being the longer guy. But if you could throw him up against the cage, make it a little bit of more of a dogfight, I think Salikhov has a decent shot to pull off a win. But for the pick, I got to go with Randy Brown. I know it's chalky and it's kind of a cop out, but for the pick, if I gun to my head, I'd take Randy Brown. But I don't really like don't like the price on him. So those are the picks. UFC 296, 14 done and in the books. Hopefully, all of them make it to fight night, and we can cash some bets. Once again, if you want in on the bets, the premium membership link is in the description. Jump in there or wait till Friday. You get the one-time purchase there for all our bets for UFC 296. But looking forward to this card. We'll be there in attendance again if you didn't catch that at the beginning of the show. So if you're there, you see us, say what's up. Don't feel scared to come up with us or come up to us by any means. We're pretty nice dudes, and we like to chat it up with you guys. So looking forward to it. You got anything else before we head out of here?
Biggest card of the year, last card of the year. Let's make it count, because this is the last one we get for going on a month after this one. So, man, I'm so pumped. It's going to be fun.
And of course, stay up to date with everything at the Double Leg on Instagram. We'll drop our free pick there, and stay up to date on the medias. For me, at Hagi Picks, it's right there on the screen. Just add the @ and I'll give you a couple free plays as well. So stay up to date on that. Where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
Appreciate you all. Last one of the year. Hit the subscription button for us. Hopefully we can get a little momentum going into next year. Hit the like button for us. It's much appreciated. Till next time, the Double Leg signing out.